Welcome comic book fans to Potbelly Gamers hashtag Pullthis for the week of Wednesday, March 29th, 2017. I'm your host, Glenn Kremp, aka Leafsin6, and this is my top choices for the comics released this week. My top choice for this week is Marvel's back, and I think they're finally doing things right. Resurrection starts this week. It's a little confusing because there's an X instead of a T-I-O-N, but that's alright. It starts off with X-Men Prime #1. Kind of a one-shot story, but we now are going to see the effects from the Inhumans vs. X-Men 6-part storyline. So my first choice going to be X-Men Prime #1. This almost had a great, if you remember back from the 90s, a Chris Claremont feel to it. We start with Kitty Pryde going back, and she's come out of her venture with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So she's now back in Chicago doing what she wants. And I really liked how it started off with her dancing, kind of how we were introduced to Kitty Pryde way back when. Storm comes down and wants to give Kitty Pryde the title, I would say, of leading the X-Men. And this is a great story. It sets up everything really nicely. We get a little bit of Lady Deathstrike and where she's going to be going with the Weapon X storyline. And just overall a great feel to this story. Kitty Pryde through the years, we get to see her old rooms, a lot of her past comes through this. We go back to the mansion where Storm has put into, I forgot where she put it. So excited to read that. I'm really feeling that X-Men are coming back, and coming back as we the readers remember them, not kind of lost as their titles have been for a while. Second to that would also be Inhumans Prime #1, which is also kind of dealing with the opposite effect of what happened through Inhumans vs. X-Men. Now the Inhumans don't have the Terrigen Mist anymore, and it shows how they're suffering now not having their powers. Again, another great story of seeing where they're going. We get a little bit clue as to what's going on with how they feel. As last week, the Unworthy Thor, we finally got a big secret revealed. This week we get a new secret between Magnus and his brother Black Bolt, where there's a whisper of something that has now upset Black Bolt, and we don't know what's going on with that quite yet, but again, a great storyline, which is, we're going to see the future of that. Also with both those two titles this week, which again I can't highly recommend enough, there's the regular covers and we also have a variant cover. There's a really great variant cover I picked up, which puts the two covers together, which looks really awesome, and you can maybe see that here, or here. Somewhere in between. Also, if you're at your local comic book shop, you're also going to get the free Resurrection story guide. This is going to go through everything that they're doing, and comic shops are giving this out for free through Marvel. And it'll give you some of the new titles coming up with the all-new Weapon X, with the new X-Men Gold, X-Men Blue, and lots of other great features. Really excited about where the X-Men are finally going. I feel this is the right direction, and Marvel is really bringing them back. Also this week, kind of with the storyline, now I'm not really going to suggest this comic because it's weak. But as you've been reading through some of the storylines, the original X-Men have been taken back from time to the future, and you're kind of dealing with how they're reacting to a lot of the storylines in this. So Cyclops, Jean Grey, and all those guys are back. They've now taken themselves out on a little other adventure that isn't set with the X-Men universe. Now when I go back to X-Men Prime, they're in the danger room and they kind of leave a message for Kitty Pryde that, hey, we're gonna go off and do our own thing now. But I don't know if you've heard the last panel of that comic. I'll spoil it now for you. Is you can see the probably screenshot right here. An X-Men dance party is the last thing I really wanted to see. So there might be a weak comic, but the other two were really strong this week. Next up, I'm gonna go with a series and a book that seems like it's taking forever to get completed, which is the Dark Knight 3, The Master Race. Now again, if you've been reading that, and this has been a couple years now, them trying to get this book from Frank Miller and Brian Azzarello. Last we left it, Batman died, Superman put him in the Lazarus pit. We had the Kryptonians who are trying to get Superman's boy, Jonathan. Wonder Woman has protected them and is now pretty much taking them to Amazonia. So the really good thing about this comic was there was a really great fight sequence between the Kryptonians and the Amazons. Very violent, very bloody. Felt kind of cool. Now we have a brand new young Batman again, or a young Bruce Wayne. It's an enjoyable story. The story is going okay. I'm really concerned that this is book 8 and it's supposed to be only book 9. It seems like it's not really wrapping everything up quite yet. But on the insert, we have a really great story dealing with the Commissioner, Batman, and if you remember from the original Dark Knight series, Bruno. And that was a really enjoyable, great read this week. I would recommend picking it up. It's a fun read, just based on the Kryptonians versus the Amazonians. Because this is also a long month and we're in the 5th week of comics, it takes away from the original release dates of a lot of comics. So this is a week of we get annuals and special comics. DC this week has done a very interesting stuff where it's a lot of Hanna-Barbera mixed with DC characters. So we had a couple with the Suicide Squad versus Banana Splits, Green Lantern taking on Space Ghost, and one of the ones I would recommend was the Booster Gold going back in time to hang out with the Flintstones. It's a pretty interesting story of Booster Gold. An alien invasion comes to him in the future. They try to take over him on a nice date. So he decides, I'm going to go back in time and stop where these aliens come from. Meeting Fred and Barney, and they all get together trying to, let's just say, stop the alien race. Crazy enough, some panels are weird. People are angry in the Flintstone age that Booster Gold's come and stopped this attack. But again, it's a very interesting story. It was fun read. Now, the more interesting thing about that comic is the bonus comic at the end, which is the Jetsons. I found it really fun, really interesting, just for the fact of where this was going. And it's the history of how the Jetsons get Rosie, you know, their droid. I'll spoil it for you right now. I do want you to go out and read it. This is the story of George Jetson's mom on her deathbed, being 124 years old, and going to the rival company of George Jetson and deciding where she wants to go with her life. It's a pretty interesting read, and I'll just say it right now. She becomes Rosie. It's a crazy comic, it's a crazy story, and it just blew me away where they were going with that. A really fun read this week. If you had time, I'd check them out. If you have been reading some of the Flintstones, and I do know, and I want to give a big shout out to Yasser last week, who did an awesome job filling in for me. Thanks, Yasser! He did actually mention the Flintstones and how that comic series was a little dark. This Jetson turn takes a lot of a little light-hearted role. It feels good. So Flintstones has been dark. But this Jetson one seems a little bit more lighthearted and very interesting. And as mentioned before, because it's the 5th week of comics, DC puts out annuals. So we got 2 annuals this week. We got the Batgirl annual and we got the Titans annual. Titans annual is actually leading into a new story arc that's going to be happening in the Titans. The villain, the Key, has kind of rounded up 8 members of the Justice League, or I should say 4 members of the Justice League, 4 members of the Titans. Batman, Nightwing, Aquaman, Aqualad, Wonder Woman, Donna Troy, Flash, and Wally West Flash. So we did get, Donna Troy was the main story arc of what was going on here, her discovering her actual true identity. But it does seem there's a key player in the behind the scenes of what's going on in this storyline, where the Key at the end gets sent back and he's answering to somebody that we don't know yet. Also, another fun story was the Batgirl, which is a Supergirl Batgirl team up, and that was just a really enjoyable story, having those 2 characters together, just talking and going through an adventure. A really enjoyable read on a character development on that level for them. And that's my pull list for this week. As always, please tune in to the Potbelly Gamers podcast on the allgames.com network. We go live every Friday night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This week, I'm sure we're going to talk a lot Ghost in the Shell, new Justice League trailer, new Spider-Man Homecoming trailer. And also, I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to washikong.com. Check out their website for toys and apparel and more. And as always, also get out and support your local comic book shop. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have these great titles every week. Thanks, and see you next week. Good?
That's good, yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's good, thank you.
You're welcome. Was that all right?
Yeah, that's great.